Okay, so I think we can get started. My name is Elizabeth Pendergrass, and I'd like to welcome all of you to today's webinar, Using Metrics to Manage Runaway IT Projects. I'll start by introducing our presenter today, Keith Ciocco. Keith has more than 30 years of experience working in customer service, with 23 of those years spent at QSM. As Vice President, his primary responsibilities include supporting the QSM client base with their software measurement goals, managing business development, and managing existing client relations. He has developed and directed the implementation of the sales and customer retention process within QSM and has played a leading role in increasing the size of its customer base. So without further delay, I'll let Keith get started.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks everyone for joining us today. My plan will be to give you a little background on QSM, so I'll take you through some slides initially. Also, I'll talk about some of the challenges that we face when we're dealing with runaway types of IT projects. Then, after the slides, I'll go in and show some examples of how QSM can help support some of these issues and hopefully provide some good solutions. Quick background on QSM, 42 years in business, celebrating almost 43 years coming up here shortly. Our main deal is we help our clients with project and portfolio estimation, project tracking and portfolio tracking and oversight, and benchmarking type of work. So we support our clients with measurement and metrics, and we also provide tools, support, and research in the same areas that I just mentioned. Big part of our research is this QSM Industry Database. Okay, so over 42 years of research, over 13,000 projects captured and completed. And really, by studying this data, it really gives us a good understanding of the relationships in the data. So relationships of cost of projects to the schedule and to reliability and to scope and things like that. So this database provides the latest information on cost, duration, effort, quality, team size, and scope. And we leverage all this information really to help our clients. Let's talk about some of the challenges that we face with runaway projects. Number one is dealing with unrealistic cost and schedule targets because of bad estimates, right? How many times do we get into a project and we know going in that the schedule and the scope are virtually impossible to achieve, and we're kind of stuck. So by doing a better job of estimating early, hopefully we can avoid those types of issues. Second challenge that we face is, we get into the project, we have decent targets, but requirements change, right? The customer changes their mind, they want different functionality, or the stakeholders or the management have made different decisions. They've decided on a different direction, dealing with scope or team sizes or cost, budgets, things like that. So requirements change is another big challenge. Number three, short time frame to make decisions when all these things happen. Fourth challenge, resetting customer expectations. We're in the project, customer has different requirements, or the targets weren't good, and we have to communicate that to the customer, and we have to reset their expectations. And then the fifth challenge that we're going to talk about is no metrics based approach to deal with these resetting of customer expectations. No metrics based approach to help with negotiations and things like that. We're going to talk about all this today, and we're going to show some examples of how we can help. Ways to meet the challenges that we're going to talk about. Number one, capture some historical data to improve estimating, to improve those early decisions. Also, use empirically based models to help mitigate early planning risk. And both of those methods to hopefully help us commit to better estimates early so we don't sign up to targets that are not possible. Once we get into the project, we want to do a better job of re-estimating as things change. We call that adaptive forecasting, and I'm going to take you through some examples of how that works. Fifth way to meet the challenge would be we want to leverage sizing and productivity data, not only early when the estimates are going on, but also while the project is in flight. A lot of times there's a tendency to just focus on effort and cost as we go, right? Tracking the hours of our team and things like that. But we really want to try to leverage sizing and productivity information. And the last sixth way that we're going to hopefully meet these challenges is use metrics to negotiate and reset those customer expectations. This slide actually gets us started on our estimation talk here. We want to make sure that we ensure flexibility so we can make good decisions early. And in this example, we're looking at one way to approach a problem. We call it the time box approach, used by a lot of our Agile clients. And you can see on the slide here that what we know going in is we know the productivity, we know the time and budget available that we need to achieve, and what we need to figure out is how much work we can deliver within those parameters. Now, if we don't have that information available, the productivity and the time and budget, we would approach the problem from a different angle. And we're going to show some examples of how we support that going forward. The cornerstone of the way we would support that is with the software production equation. This is also known as the Putnam model. Larry Putnam Sr. Developed these models and he's actually the person that started QSM. And you can see here that this is the basic cornerstone part of the model here in its simplest form, of course. And you can see what we're doing here is we're linking size and the amount of work that needs to be delivered to the time and the effort that will take to deliver that work. In addition to that, we're also linking the level of productivity that we need to achieve to deliver that functionality or scope or work that the customer needs. Now, by leveraging this equation, we can solve problems based on the information we have available, right? Because early on, when we're making early decisions, a lot of times we don't have a lot of information. So we're going to leverage these models to hopefully solve problems and make better decisions early in the estimation process. So this equation can be rearranged to solve various estimation problems. We're also going to want to leverage historical data early to help us with our negotiations. So in this particular view, you can see there's kind of a cluster of data points there. That's from the QSM database, right? That's historical data from our industry database that I had mentioned. And you can see on the vertical, we've got time, and on the horizontal, we have size. So this is basically telling us that as the projects get bigger, they're going to take longer to finish. And as long as we're in our comfort zone where you see the data, we're going to be good. But now in big bold red, we see the impossible zone. And this is what we try to avoid early. And this, unfortunately, is what a lot of people sign up to. And this is kind of representing those unrealistic cost and schedule and scope targets that I had mentioned earlier. So unfortunately, people will sign up to, for example, maybe a 6-month schedule when they should have allowed for 12 months, or they signed up for a smaller team size when they actually needed more people. Or maybe they overstaffed the project. They could have saved money if they moved some people to a different project. So by seeing this early, by using tools and models and empirically based data early in the process, we can hopefully avoid signing up to what we call the impossible zone. And we're going to go through some examples as we take you through the webinar here. Now, the other thing we want to focus on, once we get those early decisions cemented and committed and we're comfortable with them, we're going to want to assess our plans versus our actuals. And you can see here, this is actually a slide from our Slim Control tool. We're going to also show some examples. We're going to walk you through in quite a bit of detail today on this. But on this particular slide, you can see we've got a dashboard of metrics that we care about. We've got schedule and scope and defects and staffing and cost. And you can see that we're looking at plans versus actuals. If you look at the cumulative effective features there, that's what we're using for size in this example, you can see a thin red line. That would be my initial plan, right, on the scope that I'm supposed to deliver. And then the red data points represent the actuals, which I'm actually entering in the tools either once a month or every couple of weeks or whatever my comfort zone is. And you can see that we're falling off our plan. The yellow light's on. It's telling us we're in trouble. Okay, so that's a red flag. So you can see this project is actually a runaway project. It's going to finish late. And you can see also that we're finding a lot more defects than we had planned. You can see the red light on. You can see the defect actuals versus the initial plan. These are things we want to look at and we want to manage and we want to hopefully rein in so we can, hopefully bring this project back to success. Now, again, once we get into the project and we see those types of charts, we're going to want to re-estimate as things change. We call that adaptive forecasting. And you can see here on the charts, you can see the Gantt chart here. The blue bar represents the initial plan. The red bar is where this particular team is right now in time. And the green bar represents the new estimate. We're in the middle of the project, we're re-estimating, and we can see that we're going to be late. So this is validating that earlier slide that I showed that showed us falling off track. These estimates actually confirm that, okay, yes, we are going to be several months late, and now we want to make some decisions. How are we going to gain control back of this project? And we're going to do that by looking at all the risk trade-offs, and we're going to make decisions based on a metrics-driven approach, a data-driven approach. And you can see on this particular slide, we're looking at the actual initial estimate, which we're calling curve fit, and then the trade-offs. But we're looking at what if we add people, or what if we reduce functionality, or what if we can work to a higher productivity? Can we get this project back on track? And we want to use this information to communicate to the customer or to the internal stakeholders and to management, where we are, so that we can get everybody on the same page, so there are no surprises, we're transparent, and hopefully we can make some good decisions to gain control back of this project. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show some real live examples now. And incidentally, just so you know, I mentioned QSM's research. If you go to our website, qsm.com, there's actually a resources section where you can download a whole wealth of free articles and papers on these types of topics. So qsm.com in the resources section, and you'll also see replays of previous webinars and things like that. So I just want to let you know that that's there. So in addition to being tools and a consulting company, we're also that research company that I mentioned as well. Okay, starts, a good process for estimating and tracking and solving the problem of runaway IT projects starts with capturing some historical data, like I mentioned in one of the earlier slides. And what we're looking at here is actually the Slim Data Manager. This would be the repository tool that we would recommend. It's the one that we use and our clients use. And you can see here, I'm opening up one project, and you can see the type of information we want to capture to do a better job of measuring and managing our projects. You can see here on the Basic Information tab, we're looking at here we've captured the amount of work that was delivered. Again, this is a completed project. And you can see here we're using function points, but this could be measured in whatever type of unit you would like, whether it's function points or user stories or epics or business requirements, so we're flexible. So we can set this up however you want, or you can set this up however you'd like. So how much work was delivered, and then we want to capture how much time and effort it took to deliver it, right? Like that slide I showed, the software production equation. We want to capture how much time and how much effort and how much work, and then we can calculate that productivity index that I mentioned, which in essence is a macro level measure for productivity and efficiency. And it takes into account the overall project environment, right? Things like tools and methods you might be using, experience level of the people that are on the team, complexity of the software that you're delivering, things like that. Okay, so we can mathematically calculate this. Once you have some historical data, we can track what your productivity numbers are. And this can be used, of course, on in-house projects, and also if you're evaluating vendor bids and things like that. Okay. So, and we can go into a lot more detail here. You can capture much more detail on the application domain and sizing and accounting rates and labor rates and custom metrics you can create, things like that. But we'll start here, just basic information that we want to focus on. Now, we can leverage that information in the estimating area, right? Those early decisions that we talked about in the slides. We want to be able to leverage that historical data to make data-driven decisions. Okay, and it starts here. Going to history, I'd load the historical projects in, which are already here. You can see here, let's look at a scatter plot just to start. And you can see on the vertical, we've got duration and size on the horizontal. We're using implementation units here. It's another sizing type of metric. And you can see in blue here is my actual estimate for duration. And you can see the trend line. This is the industry average from that QSM database I mentioned. And you can see this is representing our most recent Agile projects. And the triangles actually represent projects that you might have completed, hypothetically, right? That you've loaded in the data manager, projects that you've completed within your organization where you knew how long they took and how much they cost and things like that. Right off the bat, as soon as I run an estimate now, I can see if that estimate's reasonable. And so before I do any detailed planning, before I figure out how many hours each person's going to work, and before I open up a spreadsheet and try to roll all that up, I want to get the big picture first, a data-driven picture to make sure we're on the right track. Now, these could also be estimates, these triangles. It could be your projects that have been completed, or they might be estimates that you've loaded in. And let's say if this triangle was one of your estimates, or maybe it's a vendor estimate, right, a vendor bid, this would fit into that impossible zone category that I mentioned, right, where someone's trying to get you to sign up to a schedule or a budget that's not possible. It's not possible because we can see it's not consistent with the data, and we can see that early before we spend hours laying out a detailed plan. Hopefully just that alone helps save you some money in your early planning. Now, again, we're in the estimating area, and these are actual outputs. I'm going to actually show you how to run some estimates in a minute, but I just wanted to explain this kind of communication vehicle, and you can use this data to negotiate. What we're looking at here on my left is a navigator of views that describe one estimate that I've run. And you can see here I've got this particular project I've got estimated to deliver in 10 sprints. This is an Agile example. It's a Agile Scrum example. But this could be a waterfall too. We can set up a template or use a template that represents the way you do business. Okay, so we're flexible. This would be more of a waterfall example, right? Where we've got the concept, we've got the requirements and design, we've got deliver, right? Deliver and test and deploy. Okay, so this is flexible. Let's go back to where we were though. So deliver in 10 sprints, and you can see on the bottom here, 4.5 months. And it's going to cost me about $1 million. That's my estimate. 6,700 person hours of effort. Okay, that's my initial estimate. And you can look at trade-offs and risk, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. So how did we get here? How did we get this estimate? Let's look at some examples. So different ways to approach the problem that we want to solve. Remember, I showed again that software production equation is flexible. It can be rearranged to satisfy different problems that you're trying to solve. Let's start with what we call a ROM estimate, or a rough order of magnitude. And in this example, we're assuming we know the scope and we know our productivity, and we're trying to solve for the time and the effort. Okay, we're doing an early estimate here, figuring we don't have a lot of information. And we're going to go ahead and show an example. Name of the project. And then we want to decide what phases do we want to include in this estimate. We can click those on and off. The start date of the project, and then the application domain. And you can see here, these are all knowledge bases from the QSM Industry Database. And when I click on one of these, what happens is it brings in the typical cost and schedule and effort numbers for this particular type of project. Right? For QSM database, all that research that we do, we keep it current with the latest technologies, and we leverage it in our tools so our customers can be supported with their estimates. Now in this example, we're using the Agile knowledge base, most recent data. And then I'm going to go ahead and tell Slim, that's what we're looking at here, Slim estimate. Is this a big project or a small project? So we're going to use a t-shirt sizing approach. And you can see in this example, we're using stories to measure the scope. And you can see here when I say small, medium, large, it's bringing in a size estimate for me based on the industry data. Now, once you start using these tools, they can be configured for you. So when you say big, small, medium, it would be how you would define big, small, and medium in your environment. But initially here, we're figuring right out of the box, we might not have any of our own data. We're going to start with the industry database. And then we're going to put in that productivity index that I mentioned, which is calculated from our historical data, or we calculate it based on the QSM Industry Database of most recent projects, based on the application domain. Now, that's one approach. Let's say I don't have a feel for size, right? We're getting started here and there's not a lot of information. We're trying to figure things out. So here we're going to open up what we call our level of effort wizard or fixed resources. And here in this example, we know what our budget is. We know the effort that we have available, and or our peak staff, or how many resources we have. That's what we know, and then we want to figure out how much work we can deliver and how long it's going to take. So in this example, I'm going to put in the name of the project, the start date, the phases again that we want to include. And again, these phases can be tailored, right? We don't have to call them, we can call them how you would define them in your particular environment. And then again, application type. And then I'm going to put in what the budget is. I've got this much effort, or I have this many people. And then I'm going to use that productivity index again. Now, that's another example. Let's show one more here. And this would be that time box example that I mentioned in the slides. This would be a lot of our Agile clients like this. And a lot of times we hear, oh, well, we already know what it's going to cost, or, we already know how many people we have. And that's okay. We still want to validate whether that information is realistic or not, so we don't go down the wrong path, because we want to avoid getting into a runaway project scenario. So good decisions early, right? So in this example, we're going to figure we know our productivity index from our Agile database, and we know the time and the budget that we have available because we're being told what we have to do by the customer in this example. And then we're going to figure out how much scope we can deliver within those parameters. And at the same time, we're going to validate whether the time and budget and all that is realistic. We want to make sure we're on the right path. So again, start date, name of the project, phases, and then an application type. And remember, a whole wealth of information. So this goes from engineering to business to package implementations to different flavors of each. So we can set this up how you want. And then again, a productivity index will populate based on the industry data or your own history. And then the time and the effort that we're being told. And we could use effort, or we could use team size. And then I'm going to go ahead and run this one, finish, and then it runs the models, generates the estimates, and brings us back to this analysis area where we can negotiate. Okay, and again, 10 sprints, 4.7 months, 6,700 person hours of effort, and $1 million budget. And then also, we can look at trade-offs, right? That risk trade-off analysis that I mentioned. What if we, let's say 4.5 months isn't good enough. We need to get done in 4 months. Well, what are we going to do about it? Well, what if we leverage, what if we can use that extra Scrum team? What if they can help us out? Within seconds, I can see a whole new estimate with a bigger team size. You can see the people go up. You can see here that we save a little bit of time, but at a bigger cost, right? And this is where we want to be transparent with the customer and the stakeholders, and everybody's on the same page early, so we can make good decisions. And if people challenge me, I can say, look, I believe in this because it's data-driven. It's based on empirically based evidence. So $1.8 million for a little over 4 months. That's one scenario. And I can look at others. What if we reduce functionality? Or, what if we could work to a higher level of productivity, if we had more experienced people, things like that. And as I'm looking at these scenarios, I can log them into a solution log so I can analyze them and compare and contrast them and talk about them and communicate them with the team. And you can see here, again, adding a few people, we'll deliver in 8.5 sprints instead of 10. Saves a few weeks, not much, and bigger cost. And we've got all these nice analytics here as well, where we can look at the risk, and we can decide, how much risk do we want to carry here? You can see here that we've got a great chance for budgeting, great chance of staying within $4 million. Not so great down in the 10% range, $1 to $2 million. Same with schedule. Great chance to get it done in 5 months, but if we're getting pushed 3.5 to 4 months, that's a red flag right there. But the beauty is we see it early, and we can be transparent about it and make good decisions. Now, this first estimate, this might be my 50% estimate out of the box. I could also and if I have the luxury, I will track this and re-estimate. If I don't have that luxury, I could do a contingency plan right now and say, okay, give me the schedule and the budget that I've got a 90% chance of achieving, right? You can see here, or an 80% or whatever your comfort zone is. And when I hit next and finish, 2 steps, it runs the model again and gives me a more conservative estimate. It gives me an 80% chance of achieving success, or 90% in this situation. Okay, so far we've talked a lot about early decisions to hopefully avoid the runaway IT project. Now, let's get into it where we're actually in the project now. So what we want to do now is track the project according to the initial plan that we came up with, and we're going to do that using Slim Control. Okay, and so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring that plan in here so that we have something to track. And hopefully you're using Slim Estimate for that, but if you're not, that's okay. You would, if you have a plan from somebody else in the company, you can certainly bring that into Slim Control as well. We also have a very robust API that our clients use to bring information in from other tools as well. In this example here, we've got our plan loaded, the planned start and end dates for each phase, planned start and end dates and actual dates for each milestone, and then the assumptions that we made. The people that the team size that we agreed to, the amount of work that we agreed to, and broken out however you'd like. Here I've got features, I've got design components and things like that, as well as defects. We can break out the defects as well. We can track those and break them out by severity category and things like that. So these are the assumptions that we made, the initial plan. We can also bring in the plan on a monthly basis. So how many people am I planning to use each month? Or how much work am I getting or planning to do each month or every couple of weeks? And then again, plans for different labor rates that we want to use. This is a macro view dialog box. There's another area in the tool that I can go into more granularity and bring in different sets of labor rates and things like that. Okay, this would be my initial plan, and the other thing I'm going to want to do is track that plan. This would be my actuals here. You can see an example where I'm actually tracking the amount of people each month, total people, total work delivered. Here I'm using features, but this could again say stories, or it could say however you would define the work in your particular environment, components or modules, or however it's flexible, however you want to set it up. How many defects we've found, broken out by severity, and you've got some other metrics here too that I've set up, design components. So these are the actuals that we're putting in once a month. So you can configure this and track based on your metrics, and you can actually customize the overall project environment as well. So I could come in here and set up my project description. This is again Slim Control for tracking. I've already done my estimate. Project environment that you're working in, predominant development machines and operating systems and industry sectors and things like that. Reliability information, the parameters that you want to use to measure, phase names, milestones, and how you want to set up the sprints or the increments if you're doing Agile. Okay, we would set this up, or you would set this up with our help. We teach you how to do this, based on the way you do business. Now, there's additional configurability as well. Like we can customize how we assess the duration metrics and the staffing. We could create custom metrics. We can customize these control bounds that you see here. You remember on the dashboard, we're looking at actuals and plans, the yellow lights coming on. Remember I showed this actually in the slide as well. And you can see the lights coming on and the control bounds that we've set up based on our comfort zone. So you can customize those. You can see here, I've set up the different parameters so that you can determine when you want the lights to come on to show caution or, hey, I'm in trouble. So full configurability, and then we can leverage that setup to manage the project according to the plan. So here we are with the dashboard. Again, the navigator concept, same as the estimating tool, right? We've got all these views here to my left. And here we're looking at sizing information, the construction part of everything. And here are the features, again, right? Here's my plan in blue. Red data points are my actuals. Yellow lights coming on showing me I'm in trouble. So this is, by definition, a runaway project. It's going to be running late. And we can look at some additional measures, some dashboards. You can see here the schedule and again the scope, and now we've got staffing and cost and defects on the same view here. And you can see this project's in trouble, not only from a schedule or construction viewpoint, but also we're finding a lot more defects than we had planned. Now the question is, what are we going to do about it? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run another estimate to validate to confirm and make sure. We're going to run another estimate to see where we're actually going to be going forward. To do that, what we're going to do is going to hit the forecast area here, and we're going to say OK. And then what's going to happen is Slim Control is actually going to curve fit to the actuals and run new projections based on any changes that might have happened on the project. So here we are, we've got the metrics that we care about, and you can see here that Slim Control is actually running an estimate based on each metric. And then what it's going to do is it's going to leverage a weighting scheme based on where you are on the project, right? It's going to weight each metric based on how far you are along. So for example, defect information might take a heavier weight later in the project. The sizing and the milestone information probably a heavier weight earlier on and midway through. As well, and as well as we've got other metrics here too, like earned tasks and things like that you can customize or set up yourself. So we're going to leverage this weighting scheme, and you can use the QSM defaults, or you can customize this based on how you would define how you typically see things in your project development environment. How you would want to weight things differently if they are different. So it's going to actually curve fit to the actuals. It's going to leverage the weighting scheme from QSM. And then it's going to run new projections based on all the data. And when I hit OK, what's going to happen is it's going to generate a new estimate. And it's going to bring us back here now. Now we're going to be able to look at this dashboard again, but now we're going to be able to see the new estimate. So the blue bar, and I showed this actually in the slides early on in the presentation. So the blue bar here is my initial plan. The red bar is where the team is right now actually in time. And the green bar is my new estimate. So you can see here that this is validating what we saw earlier. We're actually going to be late. And if we take a closer look, you can see at the chart here, we had planned on delivering 508 features, and we've only delivered 394 so far. We had planned on a $2 million cost, and you can see here we've actually already overspent. Excuse me. So what Slim Control is doing is it's taking the actual work delivered, the actual duration that has elapsed, and the actual effort spent, and it's actually recalculating that productivity index. So we had planned on a PI of a 16.1. You can see that we're only achieving a 14.5. So that's powerful stuff. So we can see if we're working to the level of productivity that we had initially planned. And excuse me, this could also be if you're evaluating a vendor. The vendor came in with a certain schedule or cost goal, and a budget, and you were able to see what their productivity index is and if it's competitive with industry. So you know who to choose, right? If you're looking at different vendors, and you can track and see if they're working to the level they had promised. So now you can see plans versus actuals. You can see that we're in trouble, and now we want to make some decisions to hopefully gain control back of this project. And we can do that by looking at the risk trade-off analysis that I had mentioned earlier. So we go over here to the control button, and we go to trade-off, and we can say, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? We're late. A lot of times what happens is, the decision makers say, oh, hey, or the vendor will say, hey, don't worry, we'll add people, and we'll get it done for you. And as a lot of people know, based on experience, that doesn't always work out. A lot of times we get diminishing returns when we add a lot of people. But we want to look at the trade-offs. We want to see what's reasonable. That way, the stakeholders are involved as well, transparency, and that we can make good decisions, and we can base it on the data. So here, we've got 27 people. What if we add people? How's that going to impact everything? Within seconds, I can see the impact of that by hitting apply, and you can see the new estimate. So my initial estimate, 27 people, $5.5 million cost, and 21 months. You can see if I add people, I'm going to save a little bit of time, but I'm going to throw my cost way up. I'm going to go from $5.5 million to $6.8 million. I'm only going to save just 3 weeks or so. That's a red flag. I don't know if that's a good decision. we're going to want to, we're going to want to negotiate this and talk about it, communicate it, look at other alternatives. Now, when I hit OK, what happens is it updates all these views for that particular estimate, so we can see graphically now. If you need to make a presentation, right, to the management or the stakeholders, the customer, you can see we're still going to be late. You can see the staffing go way up, costs skyrocket, and you can see we're still, we're going to deliver it, but it's going to be later than we had hoped. Now, another trade-off another option might be, well, what if we reduce functionality? Can the customer live without those features till the next release if we tie it up early? And we can look at those trade-offs as well, see the impact of that. So if I hit OK, it's going to run another estimate based on a smaller amount of work. And you can see here that, okay, we're getting pretty close to getting done on time. People look good, staffing, cost, and you can see here where we've tied it up early. And so we'd want to talk to the customer and make sure they're okay with that. And then we'd ask questions like, is this worth it? Are you better spending the extra money to get it done on time? Or is it better just to is it okay that it slips 2 weeks? We save you a ton of money. We still get all the functionality delivered. Is that the best? What is the best scenario for you? And here's all the data, and this is why I'm confident in my assessment of the problem and how to get it back on track. So we've looked at some trade-offs. Now this is one example. This is one project. This would be another example here. Here we're using story points as our sizing measure, and you can see here this particular project's in trouble as well. It's going to be a little bit late, and you can see our burn down charts. You can see how much work we have left to do as time moves forward, and then we can also break this out in more detail. So this would be, the effort by role by month. How much are we tracking here? And you can see, for example, the developers are in purple, and you can see here we're budgeting about 690 person hours of effort each month for developers. If we only have 500 in our budget, that's a red flag, and we want to know that. So these are the estimates going forward, broken down at a lower level. And all of that is tailored here. We have this whole area that we can break everything out, right, with the different labor rates, so we can get you the estimates at a detail level as well as a macro level. And the skill allocations, these are all broken down on a percentage basis. That's how, so we figure out, is it going to be 6 months or 12 months? Is it going to be 20 people or 10 people? And then based on these percentages, it'll break out the estimate into more granularity. And you can use the QSM defaults, right? These are percentages. Like, for example, typically in this example, more money is spent early in the project, on the management decisions and some of the analysis up front, development, and as we get into phase 3 and documentation, more is spent towards the end of the project, right? So this can be tailored for you. You can use the QSM templates, or you can create your own. But this enables us to break out that high-level estimate into more detail for you as well. Now, once we generate the initial estimates, then we do the project tracking, oversight, risk trade-off analysis. Then we come full circle. We want to bring this information back into that data manager that I had showed initially, right? So now we know how much work we actually got done, how much time and effort it took to deliver, and then also that productivity level that was achieved. How much work was delivered, time and effort it took to deliver it, and how much the productivity level we were able to achieve. And then we can leverage this information the next time we have those early decisions. So that pretty much concludes everything. In summary, we really want to be able to leverage the metrics and the data early so that we can make good decisions, and then we want to have the flexibility to look at different trade-offs, track the project to its fruition, and then keep that data the next time that we have to make those early decisions. And that pretty much covers everything. I can hand it back over to Elizabeth now for any questions. And Elizabeth, I can't hear you, so I'm wondering if you're on mute.
Can you hear me now, Keith?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So I just wanted to make everybody aware that we will have a replay available as well as slides for download, and that will be available sometime next week. But we have been getting some great questions from our audience today. So if we're all ready, we can launch right into the Q&A. So I will start with one that is, how are the data points captured for slide 10?
For slide 10, take a look at that real quick. Okay, right. So there's multiple ways. So we have an API that you can leverage that would bring data in automatically from, if you have a more detailed level tracking tool. Or, I mean, the information is so macro level. If you only have one or two projects, a lot of our clients, they just go ahead and you can manually enter the information in. If it's just a handful of information once a month, you can certainly manually enter it in. But again, you can leverage the API to bring the information in automatically if you have a lot of projects and you need to do it that way. So we're flexible there for you.
Okay, the next question we have is, how do you plan the number of defects you will encounter?
Okay, great question. Very similar to, so we're basically leveraging the models within the tools, just like we model, the time and the effort that it's going to take. We also leverage the models and the historical data to predict how many defects are we going to find. So the short answer to that is, based on historical data, based on the empirically based models within the tools, is how we would set that up. And again, I can, feel free to call me directly. Happy to take you through a more detailed explanation and take you through some examples.
For Agile, is your basis for productivity based on hours or points?
Could you repeat that question one more? Could you repeat that question again?
Sure. For Agile, is your basis for productivity based on hours or story points?
Oh, right. A combination. So we're actually using that productivity index to measure productivity. And if you remember that one slide I showed, that software production equation, we're actually taking into account multiple factors to measure productivity. The amount of work delivered, the amount of effort spent, and the amount of time it takes to deliver is all being factored into that productivity measure. So if you're using story points for sizing, that would factor in along with the schedule that it took to deliver those story points and the effort that it took to deliver it as well.
Do you support size indication in cosmic function points?
Yes, absolutely. So we can basically set up and configure these tools for any sizing metric having to do with software. Function points is a very popular one, and cosmic function points absolutely as well. We can set it up. We can use cosmic function points as a sizing unit as well. So very flexible in that area. And again, happy if you want to reach out to me directly. Happy to take more detail, show you more detail offline, and walk you through how we would do that.
How do you determine the magnitude of a story point?
The magnitude of a story point. So good question again. That gets into the complexity area where we're actually measuring how difficult is it to deliver a story point. And we have a lot of industry data that we use gearing factors, so we know what the typical relations are between different size from one sizing measure to another. So we'd want to get at how many steps did it take to create that story point. And then we'd want to factor that in with the time and the effort to deliver the overall program, so our productivity index would be impacted as well. But to answer directly, the complexity is based on how much effort goes into creating that story point, or how many steps does it take to create that story point. How much work goes into it is the short answer.
Can you present the project performance using EVM in SLIM as well?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we have some charts that actually show some examples of how we would leverage earned value, and uh, very easy to do. We've got the graphs and charts built, and when you're putting those inputs that I showed into the estimating tool, and same type of inputs, right? Amount of work that needs to be done, and that PI, we can calculate earned value measures as well. And that would be shown in that navigator, the navigator of views that I had loaded into the SLIM tool as well. So yes, definitely can support the earned value. Again, I'll show you some examples if you want to reach out directly. I take you through some examples of some charts.
Does this scale from at a program view using multiple projects to predict with dependencies?
Yes, that would actually be our master plan tool, which I didn't get to show today. So we can actually take all those estimates and roll them up into more of a global view. And you can see the dependencies from project to project and the overlaps and how they impact the overall portfolio. And a lot of our clients use it to not only, you can use it to have, if you have a small portfolio of projects, 5 or 6 programs or projects, but also if you're trying to do annual budgeting, if you're trying to figure out how much am I going to spend next year, do we have the capacity to fulfill the demand, things like that. So that's all supported with our SLIM Master Plan tool. Very popular part of our suite, actually.
What product tier or options are available for independent IT contractors rather than institutions? Is there an a la carte option?
Actually, yeah, for smaller, we have a la carte. I mean, you can pick and choose which tools in the suite you'd like to license, and they're licensed on an annual subscription basis. And you mentioned, I think, large and small institutions. We have really small packages down to a single user, and we also have packages that, where you might have hundreds or even thousands of users, more of an enterprise option. But absolutely, smaller groups, IT contractors, we offer small flexible packages down to a single user. And if you'd like some pricing information, feel free to reach out to me, and happy to provide that for you.
Is QSM or SLIM available in the cloud, like SaaS or web?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd love to take you through in a future webinar. We'll show you some capabilities there as well. But absolutely, we offer software as a service, and where the client we would host it for you, and you can log in, and you don't have to worry about installation. And we can, actually you'd log in and we can have all your files in a centralized database, and you can communicate effectively around at an enterprise level. And we call that solution SLIM Collaborate. And again, you can access it in the cloud.
Well, I think that is all the questions we have. Keith, could you share your contact information? So if anybody
Absolutely.
has any additional questions, you can reach out to us using this contact info or the contact us area on our website. And once again, we will have a replay available. We host these webinars pretty regularly, so stay tuned for our next webinar, which I'm sure will be within the next couple months. And thank you, Keith. This was a great presentation, and thank you for all of the great questions from our audience. And we hope to host you soon for another webinar.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks, everybody. Appreciate you joining us today.